Hey everybody! Before we begin the story behind the song, Aren't You Proud? I just want to tell you that this is my favorite song that I've ever written. It's the song I'm most proud of, and if there's a legacy of my songwriting before and after this is the song I would like to be remembered for writing. So let's begin! The story behind the song, Aren't You Proud?
Make us sail the blush. You can lead the whole world wild-eyed, and you could always stop the city rush. I'll never forget the night.
This is the story behind the song Aren't You Proud from my album I Guess I'm Not Alone. The very short story is the song Aren't You Proud is about my friend Michelle Wenzel, who passed away. It's about her, it's for her, it's about what she did for me and the effects she had on me and the words she said to me. That's the short part of the story. But of course, the story is much longer than that. So, Michelle Wenzel, I met when I was like 17 years old. And it was at the time when I was living on my own with a group of people. They're all like 21 years old, so having a good time. And I was living with them and having this little affair with this dude who I mentioned in the song He Said. I didn't realize that time period came up in several of these songs, but I guess it did. But anyway, that dude knew Michelle. They went to school together in Wausau, and she had been living in California going to college, and she was coming home for the summer. So she came home, and I met her, and she was fabulous. She was outgoing and funny and just everything. I thought she was so cool, and the first thing I ever said to her was like, oh my God, you live in California. I want to go live there. I'm going to live there someday. I want to be there right now. And she was like, you should go. Absolutely go. I think you would love it. So then I got to meet her and hang out with her, and we got to be good friends. And then she decided not to go back to California. She ended up staying in Wausau, and we were all living in this big house. And around that time is when the movie Hairspray came out with Ricky Lake as Tracy Turnblad. And that's who Michelle reminded me of. And I don't think she appreciated that that's what I told her, but the fact that Tracy Turnblad was cool. She was cool. She was feisty. She stood up for what was right. She fought people. She was always happy. That's how Michelle was. And anybody who knew her knows she was just absolutely a force of nature and amazing. So years after that, after knowing her and being friends with her, she actually was struck by a car walking across the street, and then she died a result of those injuries. And I immediately wrote about her because that's what I do. And so I sat down and wrote, and I wrote, both of them are lyrics for songs basically, but one was more of a poem and one was more straight up a song. And the poem one was simply called Michelle. And in that I wrote the lines, I wonder, have they made you queen yet? Because I know you wouldn't settle for anything less. Like, she would be the queen of heaven. She would take over. And so I used those lines in the song that you hear now. And then the other song was called Aren't You Proud? And that had a chorus of Aren't You Proud? I took those words from you. And that's specifically talking about going to California. And so I wrote those, and then years later, when I was working on the song that you hear, I took parts of both of those songs. In fact, I thought I took a lot of it until I pulled out the old lyrics and found out that I wrote a lot of original stuff for this version of the song. But the Aren't You Proud was there. But I remember when I was recording this version for I Guess I'm Not Alone, I thought I was pretty pretentious thinking, Aren't you proud I took those words from you? Like, I was living in California because she told me to, and I wrote them shortly after she died. And then I looked back at the old lyrics and I found out that no, I actually had written, Aren't you proud I took those words for you? I'm going to go away and I'm going to go and live my life because of what you said to me. So I actually was correct. I wrote it the correct way the first time, and when I wrote it and sang it the next time, happily living here in California and knowing that she told me I should. So it all worked out rather well, even though I thought it hadn't. So then for the verses, the stuff about your talk can make a sailor blush, that is one of my favorite lines, and it's true. She had a filthy mouth. And I thought it was hilarious that she could say and talk the way she did because, I don't know, it just wasn't what I was expecting, I guess. But she talked like that. She said whatever she wanted to do. She was great, and she could make a sailor blush in my eyes. Then my favorite lines, the lines that mean the most to me, are the lines about, I'll never forget the time you saw me crying. You took my heart when you took my hand. And that is a true story situation that happened. So I was living in this place with these people, and I was having that affair. And I think I had gotten mad at them or something. And I was home alone, and I was drinking, and I was crying and listening to Lita Ford, Close My Eyes Forever, on repeat, over and over and over. And not because I was suicidal or whatever, because I realized that song has that implications. But basically it's a sad song about people not clicking. And so I just kept listening to it and crying, and then she just happened to come over, and she found me crying, and she didn't ask many questions. I mean, I couldn't talk about the situation anyway to anybody. It was a big secret. And she didn't ask too many questions. She just kind of hugged me and let me cry and let me get it all out, and she was there for me, and I will never ever forget that, and it's one of my biggest memories of her, and so I had to put that in the song. So when I wrote the new version of the song, I thought that I had taken verbatim from those other songs, and I'm like, I know I wrote about those situations, so I thought everything was exactly what it was, but it wasn't, because I went back and found those old lyrics, and I did mention it. So in the actual song Michelle, I talk about that situation, and I wrote, and I'll never forget how you found me in the dark. You wouldn't let me out of your sight. You told me to let it all out, and you stayed with me through the night. And you held me, you held me, you held me while I cried. And I'm like, wow, I actually wrote about it almost specifically as it wrote. The interesting thing about these older lyrics is, Michelle particularly, is this is a very bitter, mad song, talking about that her soul was taken away from us, and that I was walking in the church and feeling horrible and angry that this had happened to her and to us, that she was gone from us. But this song that I have now, Aren't You Proud, is a happy song. Everything about it is supposed to celebrate and be light and lovely, which is what I love about the song. I'm talking about someone who's passed away, but it's not a sappy ballad. I mean, there's a place for those songs too, just not on my album, I guess. But I liked that I got rid of whatever the anger was and stuff, and just decided to go with how I celebrate everything she did for me and everything she said to me. So musically, that rock song started in 2006 when I was working on an album, Darkness and Light. And actually that is my favorite Swivik album. It's up until this album, that is my absolute favorite album, and it is on Amazon for digital download, and you should really go get it. Also, the 15th anniversary is coming up, so I might have to do something about that, because I want everyone to hear that album. But anyway, I was working on that album, and I had all these rock songs going on, like pretty grungy rock stuff, and I found these loops that I was working with, and I was working on this song, and I'm like, I really need something to work with this lyrically, and so then I went to, my vault, the blue binders of old lyrics, and I went through and I found Michelle, and then I'm like, oh, I remember Aren't You Proud? Like, it was all written together. So I got them together, and then I started writing, and apparently I found the yellow sheet, my yellow notepad with all my lyrics as I write them. I rearranged and wrote a bunch of new stuff, but it all started like that. And when I was recording it, I was working with my friend, my record executive, Patrick Jacobs, who also is no longer with me. He passed away as well. But he was my record executive, and I told him, no matter what, this song is going on this album, I don't care what happens as long as this song is on the album. And as I kept working on the album and kept sending stuff, and he was sending songs to me, it ended up not fitting. But it did end up as a B-side to the single Radio. And so that was good. I got it out, even though I kind of let it go. But it was actually a good thing because I was not satisfied with the way I sang it. I never liked the way it was done, so I always kept it. And knowing I was making this album, it was the first thing I grabbed to make sure that I worked on the song to be on this album. I was going to work on it and record it and redo it and re-sing it and change anything that needed to be done because I was going to get it as perfect as I could because the song was so important to me and to her memory. And I think I did that. I don't think I'll ever be completely satisfied, but this is really, really close. And I'm very, very proud of this song, and it's one of my favorites. And I really hope everybody likes it. And that is the story behind the song, Aren't You Proud? Thank you.
Moment of your twilight.